Hello, everyone. I know you've all been asking for this for a long time, and I'm so happy today to be sitting down for a true meeting of the minds with a fellow intellectual, I would say one of the preeminent scholars of the topic we will be exploring today. Spice 8 Rack, it's so lovely to have you on the channel.
It is lovely to be here. Thank you ever so much for having me. I have only an inkling of an idea as to what I'm actually now in for, so I am looking forward to being surprised.
Well, I hope to surprise you. For those of you in the completely pedestrian audience of Yu-Gi-Oh enjoyers who may not be familiar with you or your content, what is it that you say you do online?
I would say that I am a communist propagandist masquerading as a collectible card game content creator. That's probably as close to being what I am.
I get similar comments, though I am described as an anarchist collaborator. As long as we don't have a revolutionary Catalonia moment, I think this will go very well for the pair of us.
100%. I do not foresee CNT versus POUM kind of catastrophe unfolding over the course of this Discord call.
Well, I guess I should start with the question that's on everybody's minds, which is goblins?
Yes. Yes, I would have to say yes to that.
So, if you are all unfamiliar, I love goblins. The Spice 8 Rack, you would consider yourself a goblin enjoyer, I think is probably fair to say.
Connoisseur, trying to make connoisseur and goblin work as a portmanteau, absolutely beefed it. Move on.
In Yu-Gi-Oh, we call individuals of our status gabongers for a reason that will become clear momentarily. It's not a slur. It's not a slur. We're reclaiming it. I promise.
Reclaiming it from who?
So, in Yu-Gi-Oh, there is a long tradition of goblinery, as there is in Magic the Gathering as well. You know, dozens of different types of goblins over the years through Magic's 30-plus year lifespan. Going all the way back to Mog Fanatic, to Lorwyn, to even the modern era of goblins. They still print them.
They still print them, baby, and they ain't stopping anytime soon. I'll tell you that for nothing.
The day that Magic stops printing goblins is the day I quit Magic. 7 years ago.
They haven't printed a single new goblin since then, you're quite right.
That is true. What would you say, if I were to get kind of a perspective of the modern incarnations of Magic the Gathering's goblins, what would be like a good starting point? Like, what's the one book of goblinery?
I think the one book of goblinery is a massive dose of diversity of, not necessarily behavior. I think there's diversity within a sort of subsect of the red philosophy of mana that goblins tend to inhabit. But certainly aesthetics, Magic's goblins are really interesting from my perspective in that no one world's goblins end up looking the same, and there are a whole host of different worlds. The Aki of Kamigawa look nothing like the Mogs of Wrath, that look nothing like the goblins of Kailem. It is a really interesting and quite starkly varied sort of smorgasbord of goblins. Of goblin aesthetics, which I find very interesting, but this only started happening in the sort of like post-modern borders. I'm talking sort of like post-original Ravnica, post-Zendikar, where goblins really started to be explored in really interesting and varied ways pretty consistently. So that would be my book of goblins. It would be diversity is... I wouldn't say diversity is their strength, more so diversity is a issue that you will have to face knowing that you're going to be dogpiled by any number of different looking bastards.
It is exciting to know that, like, Goblin is this sort of internal, intrinsic characteristic that holds across planes and dimensions, but at the end of the day, they are kind of all bastards to a degree.
Yes, 100%. And as well, the ways in which their bastardry manifests is oftentimes very different, and I think that's very fascinating. No two planes goblins will approach a box of scraps or the potential of getting into a fight the same, which I think is just delicious world building. Really, you can tell a lot about a world by the quality of the goblin.
God, having this conversation is just making me extremely irritable so early, because my next sentence is going to be, in Yu-Gi-Oh, we have one world, Yu-Gi-Oh.
And I assume
Imagine
a similar variety of goblins.
Well, imagine if we never left Dominaria, if we were trapped there forever. And
Oh, no.
you get the picture.
Early
Urza never
magic.
dies, baby, and his name is Yugi. 15 different Urzas per set, and they're all Dark Magician. Okay, well, there is a little bit of a diversity in Yu-Gi-Oh! Goblins, but rather than be delineated by where they are from, they are delineated by a star line. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, more powerful monsters have more stars. An idiosyncrasy of the cards that we largely just ignore because it doesn't matter until they get to 5 and 6 stars and 7 and 8 stars, at which point they require special conditions to summon. So what they're used for often is, instead of just being this remnant of early card design when they needed to tell 7-year-olds that X monster was better than Y monster, they can be used to kind of sequester different archetypes from each other, right? And the first one of these I'd like you to take a look at is the prototypical Goblin. This is the first one they ever printed, and boy, it's just stuff. This is Goblin Attack Force.
Those are men. Those are the green goblins.
These are just green men, right? Just...
Okay, first off, one thing I've always loved about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the sort of like tactility of the foiling process. We have that a little bit in Magic, but not nearly to the same degree.
We are out of our mind in terms of rarities. So this rarity did not exist at the print of Goblin Attack Force.
Got it.
This is a print of it that exists in a modern incarnation. But yeah, this is truly shocking how many different shiny variations of this card there are.
That's fascinating. I'm getting sort of proto-fascistic vibes from the uniforms, the glowing red eyes.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that.
Oh, excellent. Are the goblins fascist in Yu-Gi-Oh?
Well, maybe. So, the Goblin Attack Force is notable in early Yu-Gi-Oh! From a gameplay perspective because this attack stat, 2300, so far ahead of anything else you could get on a normal summonable monster. Comes with this downside that they can only attack once. But they are this, like, faceless army. The guys in the back are just, like, they look very sad. They've got, like, droopy eyes.
Very sort of like Killzone cover art. I don't know if you ever played that.
Yeah. It's like they're supposed to just be a mob you mow down in a video game made during the Iraq War, right? So these are what I'll call the 4-star goblins.
Okay.
And they're delineated by the fact that they all have 4 stars. And each of them occupies a position in a military, which is a strange choice for goblins, right?
I mean, yes, so in terms of Magic, goblins do not tend to take authority and order particularly well unless it's coming from other goblins, you know, your goblin chieftains, your goblin kings, etc., etc. And even then, the order that they end up creating is very rarely consistent and good and disciplined, with the exception of the Mog, who were a race of goblins specifically created by Volrath in order to effectively have, a cannon fodder army to throw at the Webberlight crew and eventually to attack Dominaria with. And there are a few goblins in the Boros Legion in Ravnica who have given up their sort of either individualistic, semi-criminal, lumpen proletariat ways and become enveloped into a military structure. More often than not, they're either presented as sort of lowly recruits, although as time has gone on, there's a sort of nice narrative within. I think it goes Goblin recruit from original Ravnica into Goblin Legionnaire in Return to Ravnica to Goblin warlord or war chief or something like that in Ravnica Allegiance. And you see sort of like maybe not that exact same goblin, but suddenly a goblin going from someone holding a spear to someone leading a battalion to someone leading like a proper attack force, which I find very interesting. But yes, usually goblins not big on the whole discipline and order.
I will say that's crazy hearing like Boros Legion analogs, because that's almost exactly what happens over the course of kind of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Goblin print. God, to even call it a storyline would probably be doing a disservice to the concept of telling stories. But after Goblin Attack Force, they released Goblin Elite Attack Force. Similar concept. Maybe doesn't die when it goes to defense. But these guys are like actual knighted fighting forces.
Huge fan of the inbuilt potbelly in the armor. An achievable fantasy armor, an achievable fantasy body type. My love and support for. Is that the artist in the bottom right hand corner? Kazuki Takahashi?
Oh, great question. The answer is Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not credit their individual artists. Kazuki Takahashi is the creator.
That's not great.
No, it's not.
What the hell?
Do you remember the period of Magic where like they were almost universally seeking out individuals to draw this sort of 3D fantasy style?
Yes.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is built in such a way that it's always been like that, with this like vaguely anime style, and then no one knows who drew anything.
Well, that sucks and makes me sad. I love to know who artists are when they've produced work. Or at least, be able to find more of their stuff as time goes on. Oh, whack.
It is getting better. Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards are now kind of differentiating in terms of both like an art paradigm, and occasionally they will allow people to like reveal what cards they drew, but yeah, not great. For a long time, these 4-star goblins were really all we had. The different variations of these, we have a Goblin Recon Squad, which is, I guess maybe the goblins are part of a new type of warfare that focuses more on surveillance. We got a goblin.
Techie goblins. Love a techie goblin. Oh, they got a balloon and all.
I do appreciate the spy balloon. That is an extremely fun touch. We have the Goblin Black Ops, which you would think, a card called Black Ops, they're already militaristic. What would you expect? Probably something like the video game or like, Navy SEAL Team 6. They're actually ninjas, which is similar.
Okay.
But, it's something. But then, just as kind of warfare became this weird, hyper-real caricature of what war is, so too did the goblins in Yu-Gi-Oh! Start realizing it was much funnier to make the individual cards a joke. Mm-hmm. So we now get similar cards with similar effects called things like Goblin Freefall Squad. What if they were like paratroopers, but they're goblins, so they're not good at it?
It's really interesting seeing because it's similar with Magic. Right at the start of Magic the Gathering, goblins were presented not like super comedically, certainly not at inception. They were presented as very similar to the goblins in Tolkien, where they weren't nearly as strong or as fearsome or as terrifying as the orcs, but they certainly had a degree of sort of like sinister might to them, like sinewy strength, sneaking around, stabbing, all that stuff. But at some point, and seemingly here as well, we've gone from Tolkien-style goblins to, I don't know, so like what the prototypical funny goblin would be for modern goblin presentations. But it certainly has happened both in Magic the Gathering, goblin engineers where they're, eating paste, a goblin surgeon where you have to sacrifice goblins to regenerate other goblins, and the artwork shows them, sawing off a goblin's leg and all that stuff. And obviously here, Goblin Freefall Squad, a bunch of goblins who, I'm going to guess, a solid 3 of these will hit the ground and not be dead. It's fascinating to see that change.
I do appreciate the one who's falling out of a plane, wearing a smaller second plane. That's enjoyable to me. Mm-hmm. The first goblin to sit down in front of a television and watch like a Marx Brothers comedy changed goblinery forever.
100%.
He was like, wait a minute, we're perfect for this. So this is the extent of the 4-star goblins.
Got it.
A series of, faceless hordes of guys who spent a decade being weaponized in different forms until, they returned as a caricature of themselves, which, honestly, I appreciate. I think it's a lot funnier. These are not our only goblins. The level 3 goblins are an archetype of goblins that's come out within the past couple of years called Goblin Bikers.
Ooh,
and
okay.
These guys stretch the limit of what it means to be a goblin, but also stretch the limit of what a bike is allowed to be. Goblin Biker Big Gabonga.
Hey, I don't know how they got my stage name in a Yu-Gi-Oh card, but they did. My word. So that's, first off, that's, now that I can see the art clearer, is clearly not a bike, but most of a bike stapled onto a saber-toothed tiger. So that's cruel and unusual. The goblin also, different skin tone, this massive, tiny legs, massive torso, huge ears. This is gorgeous. This is very fun artwork.
Oh, he's a real freak. Would it make it a little better for you to know that the animal does like it? This is a symbiotic relationship.
I feel like I like it the same, but my dislike has simply been... there's not been a quantitative change to my dislike, but more of a qualitative change to my dislike.
Okay, I get it. Each of these guys... what I like about these guys is... I don't really know that you could call them all goblins. This is Goblin Biker Troika Griare.
Oh, now those are very sweet. They're my favorite thus far. Huge fan.
I will say they are sweet. I don't know if I could call them goblins.
I mean, when we seek to create harsh distinctions between ideas and groups, we get lost in inconsolable contradiction. So I'd say whoever calls themselves a goblin in this game, that's a goblin to me. Who am I to judge what a goblin is and is not? Sometimes
a goblin is a man with a big torso and tiny legs, and sometimes it's 3 hamsters.
100%. Behold Plato's goblin. That's all I'll say, baby. Long live Diogenes.
I love the turtle on this one. They're like, yeah, our bike is going to be a turtle.
I am a huge fan of the complete mismatch of energy of the goblins on that bike seat, ready to get rearing, and the turtle that is obviously stood still eating. Huge fan. We have, this is like a more classic kind of thing a goblin can be. This is a Doug Charger. He's sort of some sort of attorney
rat.
At law. Oh, I love him.
He unfortunately has left the courtroom behind, but he has replaced it with a sort of rhinoceros thing that has a mask on it.
Yeah, it looks sort of boar rhinoceros. You know what this feels like? If I'm to compare Magic here for a second, this feels like what would happen if you took a Gruul warrior and passed them through an Omen path into modern Kamigawa. They spent a few weeks there learning from the Aki and then returned back to the Gruul heartlands. This is the kind of stuff that they would come up with.
The amount of neon on this goblin is more than a base set goblin from Yu-Gi-Oh would experience in their entire life.
Oh, 100%. Well, actually... Oh, sorry, you said Yu-Gi-Oh! I thought you said Magic for a second. I was about to come for your throat. But no, you were right. This is this is very, very unlike a lot of the goblins we've seen thus far. I will say one thing that I find consistent and lovely is the motorcycle handlebars on the back of a unrelated beast. Really love that as a clear aesthetic, so a delineation. Or not delineation, rather, a through line between goblins and Yu-Gi-Oh! Or at least these goblin bikers. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
We have another one. This is Clatter Sploder. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that they have put a megaphone under the bird so that it is louder.
Oh, yes, of
This
course,
is a great idea. From my perspective, I would consider doing this.
Huge fan of the bird having goggles. When you're going at high speed, you've got to protect not only your eyes, but the eyes of your vehicle/friend. Wholeheartedly agree.
And of course, we do have to mention that you can, as a goblin, you can also be sexy. We do have the one sexy goblin who is riding a snake, not what I would consider a bicycle, but, it works, I think.
So, first off, how dare you say that none of the goblins thus far have been sexy?
I'm selling Big Gabonga short, I'll be honest.
100%. Thank you for that self-criticism there. This is one thing I always find really interesting, I'll use that term, when it comes to presenting like different species and fancy races and stuff like that, and we can see it quite clearly here, is that when you are drawing, or when artists are tasked to draw these fancy species and they're either male-coded men or like ambiguous, you get small ones, you get big ones, you get ones with spindly arms, ones with tiny legs. The moment that you get one that's like, okay, we need to code this one as feminine, or we need to make this a woman, it's immediately long legs, boobs, midriff showing, make this a sexy goblin. It does, I must admit, frustrate me a tiny bit, but that's just because I love seeing artists come up with truly bizarre and quirky designs, as opposed to sort of like leaning on that like World of Warcraft playbook, which is orc, tauren, troll all looking different, and then like green hot lady, brown hot lady, blue hot lady as the like feminine counterparts to them.
It is exciting to be like, this is the girl goblin. I will say I do appreciate the insane like mouse ears. That's something.
That I do.
But at base, it is a sexy woman. So these goblins are certainly more, I guess, bastardy than previous goblins, and we get a good sense of that in terms of their associated spell cards. This is a Goblin Biker Grand Entrance. A little background for this. Okay. The woman in frame, her name is Dia Bellstar, and is the subject of Yu-Gi-Oh's ongoing storyline. The goblins exist because she accidentally walked by them at a skate park, and they decided to raise hell. So this is depicting that happening.
Sweet. So why did they decide to raise hell? Also, I do love that. One thing I do love about Yu-Gi-Oh is that whilst there's no, or at least not to my knowledge, no like consistent flavor text. Is there flavor text in Yu-Gi-Oh actually? No flavor text. Okay.
So the normal monsters have flavor text, but they print maybe one normal monster a fiscal quarter.
Okay, got it. So like in terms of laying out a story, obviously that makes it a lot more difficult. Magic, obviously, most cards have flavor text, even like very, very wordy ones, which might point towards a narrative or a piece of world building. One thing I do really love is how many Yu-Gi-Oh cards have these recurring characters on them. And I don't know a whole lot about Yu-Gi-Oh, but one thing, I think at some point I stumbled into like a little Yu-Gi-Oh hole on YouTube, and it was someone going through like 5-6 years worth of card printings, which showed one character slowly getting stronger over multiple printings of cards. So I do love being able to see like the Growl style goblin, the sexy big ear goblin, all here and all being presented. I find that lovely, and of course the snake there. I do have to ask. So this character just walked by them, and now they're in the story. That's the angle.
Yes. So the way that we kind of derive the story in Yu-Gi-Oh, because we don't have flavor text, is the same way I think I derive most of my interactions with other people. Is I decide what it is and then convince myself that it's true. We just guess for like 6 months, and then every so often they will release a book that includes what the cards are depicting. So
okay.
We do have it for this. The reason they're excited is because of the large pink mass on this woman's hood, which is a very valuable. You all have a loot, right? You have like loot, like a weird cute guy that has some sort of narrative significance.
Yeah, loot is now growing on me. I've just finished reading the Aether Drift story, and for the first time I feel like I actually kind of like this character. Seems like they have an appropriate place here. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know it was contentious.
Oh baby. To be fair, I also found it particularly contentious, mainly because there was something about releasing a character called Loot, the Key to Everything, which could only be found on a like chase bonus sheet of a particular set. That just felt so like on the nose for what Magic like has always been, but is increasingly becoming more of, which is this like absolute like intense collectible nonsense.
Yeah.
That, I know it seemed too apt for me not to dislike him. But now that there's been a few stories where he's actually had a little bit of development and characterization, I feel a lot more sort of like ingratiated to loot.
Yu-Gi-Oh has the funniest solution to this problem ever, which is they obviously are also about like super cool rarities of super hard to find cards, but their reprints are so aggressive that it's almost parodic. Like, if you were chasing a certain rarity of a card, doing so is a waste of your time because in 6 months it will be in a new, funnier rarity in a different set. This is our loot. His name is Snake Eyes Poplar. He is a MacGuffin in the Diabellstar story, and everybody wants this guy, including the Goblins.
Glupshitto! Hello!
It is Glupshitto. He is currently limited. We had to hit this card. He's too good.
That makes sense, yeah. So I just want to point out in terms of this character's design, I love that it is like going from tail to top. It's like, oh, sweet, oh, a little bit spiky, but still sweet. Evil eye, evil Sauron eye. Just to cap it all off. The
eye is the snake eye, and it is kind of the centralizing force in this storyline. Okay. But yeah, it is what it is. So these goblins, they like to get up to stuff. They get to have problems. The two most important goblin cards that I think have ever been printed, like most Yu-Gi-Oh archetypes, they released a whole wave of support for this and then have been trickling out a couple of cards every set since. This one we got about 6 months ago. It's called Goblin Bikers Gone Wild.
I think I've ordered that DVD.
Yeah, the original translation of this was Badass Goblin Bikers, but we had to change it because we can't say ass.
I love that. It went from, oh, there's a little swear here. Don't worry, we fixed it. And we've changed it to a very famous phrase in the Western world.
We fixed it. Now the goblins are horny.
When are they not, honestly? I love this. Is great splash art. This is very fun. Yeah,
they are. It is complete aura farming. Serves no purpose in the story. This happens 30 seconds before they get absolutely washed. They get 1v7'd, but incredible. It is a cute little moment.
Again, I love the consistent presentation of the femme goblin, who in all of her artwork thus far has been sat cross-legged.
Has to be sexy. He's got to be sexy.
Even when you're jumping away from an explosion, you got to be serving. And you know what? I respect that, actually. I respect that.
So they have followed up Goblin Bikers Gone Wild with a card that was originally translated as Kick-Ass Goblin Bikers. Cool. Unfortunately, we did not get that one either for ass reasons. Instead, it is Goblin Bikers Going Bonkers.
Okay.
We don't have this card yet, but it is a mock-up.
To be playing a game where bonkers is part of a card name. Gosh, how I wish for it. Maybe at a Return to Lorwyn, we'll get Bogart Bonkers or something like that. Maybe not Bogart Bonkers, that also sounds like a DVD I've ordered. But still, the idea is there. That hand, she's still fucking cross-legged.
She's still sexy on this one.
Everyone else is doing shit, and she's just sat down. Yes, queen, we stan. That's so it's like ridiculous.
You've got a second sexy lady in this art, which is Diabellstar, who has leashed the crazy beast and is like struggling with it. But they were no, you have to put the sexy goblin on top of the horn, and she has to be in the pose.
Gotta be the sexy goblin on top of the horn in the pose. Why else would I pick up a card if there's not a sexy goblin in a specific pose on it? That's what I want to know.
We in the community call this pose the Eldritch pose because of a card called Eldritch the Golden Lord. Mm-hmm. This is a complete tangent. It's neither here nor there. The first time we saw this man, he was standing like this, which is a classic Yu-Gi-Oh pose, just up.
Where's my hug?
Then they gave us an alt art, and he looks like this, and it's great.
Yes, bitch! Yes, bitch!
He's our favorite. He's legitimately our favorite.
Oh, that's it. I love how we've gone from, where's my hug to, come hither. Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of a gay game. I'm here for it. I'm loving this.
Okay, I'm glad we got it out of the way. There's a ton of gay cards now. Like 5 years ago, every card was Goblin Biker Mean Merciless, and now every set there's like at least a dozen cards where it's like that's just Yori, you know, that's just this is a gay man. It's great. We love it.
Fantastic.
But the end result was that these goblins got their ass beat. I guess they are still printing goblin cards, but it is so attenuated from the individual story. We got this card, Goblin Bikers Gone Wild, in this most recent set, which depicts Dia Bellstar lashing a crazy beast, which is something that happened, I want to say 2 years ago in the in-game storyline. Like the character that she is attaching a leash to, the character leashing, and half the goblins are now just dead. But they were like, you know what? Here's another funny moment from the Goblin Bikers.
Look at this bit of slapstick. By the way, there were no survivors. Huge moves.
Credits roll. Dia Bellstar died 6 years later in the White Forest.
Died on the way to her home planet.
I have to go now. The ban list needs me. That is about the extent of the goblins in Yu-Gi-Oh! We have one completely militarized, eventually parodic set of level 4 monsters. And then we have these like more traditionally anarchic rat bastards in the Goblin Bikers that love to plunder and steal and ride cool vehicles. There is one more guy that is a different stereotype.
I'm immediately uncomfortable. Show me the picture.
The last goblin, who I think technically the first series of goblins is part of their storyline, is this guy, Goblin of Greed.
This more, when you say stereotype, we're leaning more into sort of like the archetypal thieving goblin of like what you call it, of old fantasy, right?
Yeah.
A lot more muscular than those kind of because thieving goblins are almost always presented as little like even little sort of like creatures that skitter around, or in the worst case scenario, presented as horrifying anti-Semitic caricatures. This is just...
and we have those too. We've of course got our share of those.
That sucks, and I'm sorry. Whack. But this a beefy boy. This is not like a thieving goblin who sneaks into your house at night to steal pennies from your drawer. This is a thieving goblin who punches a hole in your wall and takes your safe. And I actually really like that.
So this guy is a thief in the sense that like a fat cat is a thief. He is some sort of nobility on some cards. We have Upstart Goblin, where you've got a poor guy just sort of groveling at his feet.
For sure. The rough gives it away.
Folks, we love this one. We have this card for when the stock market crashes. That wasn't a joke. It is a depiction of the stock market crashing.
That's phenomenal.
We have this card where he's upset about the price of soybean futures going down.
No,
which is
not pork belly. Not my stocks in pork bellies.
I do appreciate they're like, are they gonna get that this is like a reference to like trading
places?
Just
right?
put the word stocks on the card.
Isn't this like a direct reference as well to the film Trading Places? Like, obviously, these are all futures, but like orange juice, soybeans, pork bellies, all of these were the things that were being specifically talked about in that movie.
Oh my god, I never noticed.
The movie's great. The train scene doesn't hold up, but
I have no frame of reference for what you're talking about. I will have to, I guess, check.
It's Jamie Lee Curtis, Eddie Murphy, and some guy who I cannot remember. And it's what you call it? It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's the story about the woman who's a pauper, and then people take a bet that they can make her into a refined woman. My Fair Lady. It's My Fair Lady, but with by way of Freaky Friday, kind of.
I was like, the pretty woman story, and I'm like, that is also a reference. That is
absolutely, but would have absolutely been a shortcut to it because obviously very similar like era that those were being made. That's fascinating.
This guy is he's a real fucker. He shows up in a lot of cards in which someone is trying to sneak by. Mostly because the card that he is holding in this first card, Pot of Greed, is one of the most famous banned Yu-Gi-Oh cards of all time.
Yeah,
so
it's free card draw, isn't it?
as a result, his story has kind of transformed from just a general goblin that is independently wealthy to a guy who is constantly trying to smuggle banned artifacts places, which is a fun direction.
Yeah, I am always a fan of the sort of like archetype of the harried smuggler who, if they can only get this one crate past this one security checkpoint, all is forgiven, baby, and they don't have to fear for their life anymore. And obviously it never happens. There's always one more job. Always love that trope.
That is, I suppose, a comprehensive review of the goblins available in Yu-Gi-Oh! For some reason, over, 25 years of print, we really only have the 3 of them, the 4s, the bikers, and the 1 Goblin of Greed. I would like to leave you with one final card, which is Goblin Thief. It features the Goblin of Greed's fat ass.
Hey, I won't salute for no flag. I'll salute for that, baby. That's excellent.
It's unbelievable, the definition on the cheeks.
Honestly, that's Yugioh's ass right there. I also have to say, love the storytelling again of that's him getting into the cart and then the cart is stopped at the forceful checkpoint. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
These cards came out 22 years apart, by the way.
And I appreciate the commitment to the story there. Also, that's a long-ass ride in the back of a car. He must have calluses like nobody's business.
I mean, not if he's sitting on that dumpy, right? He's got a nice cushion.
Brilliant. Thank you for this fantastic tour of Yu-Gi-Oh's Goblins. What a treat, what a delight.
And thank you so much for showing up. It was similarly a treat and delight. I'm glad you were able to speak on your Gobliner experience. And I'm glad you now have an impression of Yu-Gi-Oh! That will last for as long as you consider yourself a duelist, I imagine to be the end of this call.
I will have an impression of Yu-Gi-Oh! The exact same as I'm sure the cushion under that goblin's ass will have an impression. For a very long time, deeply and beautifully. Thank you so much for having me on.